Hi, everyone. I'm Kendall from Hired University team, and thank you for joining the Global Fairs today. It's great to have you all here with us and here for today's next session of the day, which is an exciting one, how to write a standout CV with AI, or hosted by Hired and in special collaboration with ESCP Business School, London campus. Just before we get started, let's have a little interactive check-in. Quick question. Have you ever used an AI tool with your CV or job application? Put it in the chat. Now you know where the chat is. So that's how we're going to make this session interactive through the next hour. Great. So let's build on that foundation of using AI tools in the CV creation process. And on that note, we are pleased to have Rohan, who is the Senior Manager of Careers and Corporate Relations at ESCP Business School, as our expert today. Rohan will walk you through how to craft an impactful CV and show you how AI can help you stand out along the way. So please sit back, take notes, use the chat. Let's make it a great session where you walk away with some valuable insight. And thank you, Rohan, for being here. And I will turn the stage to you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Kendall, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Rohan, and I work at ESCP Business Corporate Relations and Career Services team. It's my pleasure to be here. I've seen already in the chat that some of you have said that you've got experience using AI. You've used it all the time. Some people say they're using ChatGPT all the time, which is great. So yes, for those of you who have been using this tool to use a craft a CV, you'll find a lot of the things are something you might already know, but what I'm here to talk to you about is how you should be using this tool while not losing your personal authentic touch. So with that in mind, I'm going to start. So today's topic, as you already know, is about mastering your CV. And obviously, we'll put in a little bit of the cover letter part as well in there at the end of it. So I'm going to take you through a guide of getting ready for the global world. It's nothing new to you that AI is sort of penetrating our lives at a very rapid pace, and it's really important to know how to use it well, how to use it efficiently, but also not to use sort of yourself while you're using it. So don't lose yourself while you're using AI. So we're going to talk we've had an introduction, so we'll talk about the ATS tracking system, something I think is really important, and how to kind of craft a CV that is in tandem with what employers are looking for through the ATS tracking system, how to strategically use ChatGPT or any other tool. Since I made this presentation, there have been a whole host of new tools, so we'll discuss those as well, so you can see the different options that are available to you, and then sort of how to use other AI tools. So we're going to talk a little bit about the human resource tech revolution. I'm going to start by asking if any of you can tell me what the ATS system is. So the ATS, if you can put it in the chat. See, just to kind of get it, sort of get a little bit of interaction going. I'm going to give you a second for that. The ATS system. So what does ATS stand for? Okay, no answer, so that's good. It's going to be something that probably you've not heard about, so that's great, Paolo. Thank you so much. It's the applicant tracking system. You're right. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So the last few years, with the onset of AI, we've seen companies start using something known as the ATS system, which is known as the applicant tracking system. So what it does, essentially, it's a system in the background that companies use to filter out CVs, which means that they will feed the system some information about what kind of CVs they'd like. And then that process at the background will help them filter out the CVs that don't match that criteria. So this is a way for companies obviously to save time and increase their efficiency, because currently we have more people than ever applying for the same kind of jobs. It improves their ability obviously to identify top candidates because they can mark exactly what they're looking for in a CV. It also improves their ability to reduce potential bias in hiring decisions. So I'm based in the UK, and here in the UK, as in many other countries, diversity and inclusion is a really important part of applications, which means that don't add things like CVs or sort of personal data on the CV that can help us identify who is applying in order to make decisions that are completely unbiased during the hiring process. And obviously, it helps to improve the diversity of the candidates that they get from their applicants. So the applicant tracking system, the way it works is that it's a software and allows employers to save time and effort by filtering out sort of curriculum by days based on specific keywords. So for example, in a marketing role, we can set how many years of experience we would like the candidates to have. So if the employer sets the number at number 5, number 5, sort of if the answer is set to 5, that will mean that anyone who's got less than 5 years of experience applying through this system will automatically get rejected. This allows this allows employers to filter out applications based on the number of years of. It could also be something like languages. So let's say some employers require that you speak languages. They will set the applicant tracking system to, let's say, 5 years of marketing experience plus an additional language, or the word bilingual. The word bilingual and the word 5 together combined will let the employers only get applications from people who satisfy both of these criterias. So you can also, with this system, employers can allocate different weightage to things. So for example, if the level 5 years of experience is more important than the candidate speaking 2 languages, that will be given a weight of 60%, whereas the language factor will be given the weight of 40%. Through this system, through this way, applicant tracking system scores it allows employers to get applicants only from relevant candidates and candidates who have the right experience, but it also makes sure that they are not being inundated with applicants that are not meeting the minimum requirements for the job. So that's something that it does. And as we spoke about, it also allows recruiters to assign different levels of weights to questions based on candidates' answers, and to also set up disqualifying questions. A lot of the times in the UK, for example, if you do not have the right to work in the UK, if you've not got the right working visa or sort of citizenship or residency, through the applicant tracking system, employers can also get applicants disqualified if they don't have the right to work in the UK. So it's a really great tool, but what does it mean for us from side? All of this seems to be working in the favor of the employer. They can save their time. They can get better kind of candidates, more competitive candidates. But what does it mean for us? What does it mean from the candidate side of things? It basically means that we need to make sure that when we are writing our CVs or cover letters, which tend to be the standard form of applications here in the UK, we are customizing our CV to increase the chance that an applicant passes the applicant tracking system. What this means is that every time, and I know that most students don't like to hear this, but every time we apply, we need to make sure that we are tailoring our application for the job. A lot of the times we'll have a CV, and we'll see a lot of students, they'll go onto LinkedIn, they'll go on the easy apply option, they will click apply to maybe 10, 20 different jobs. They'll do that every day of the week. And then by the end of it, they will tell us that, let's say we've had 100 applications, but we've not heard back. The reason that you're not hearing back is because the same CV is not going to get you to different job opportunities. So it is really, really crucial now that you know that there is this thing, the applicant tracking system that employers are using to filter out applications. It becomes even more important for you to make sure that your application is being tailored to the job. So how can we do that? This is where use of AI tools comes in. Obviously, we've been doing this. We've been tailoring applications since before the onset of AI tools. But what we can do now is that a lot of times we notice that students would not tailor their applications to different roles because it's time consuming, and that makes sense. No one wants to keep rewriting or a cover letter again and again if they're applying for 5 to 7 different jobs every single day. So here's where the AI part comes in. It can help us save time by sort of tailoring our job applications, our interviews, and things by just using simple prompts. So we've got obviously tools like ChatGPT, as many of you have already put in the chat, but there's also Gemini, that is Google's version of ChatGPT. And then there's Copilot, which is Microsoft's version of ChatGPT. But you should know that although Copilot is Microsoft branded, it is powered by ChatGPT. However, you'll still get different answers from all three platforms. So my first piece of advice would be find your go-to platform. The more you use any of these platforms, the more they understand how you work and the better the responses get over time. So it might happen the first couple of times you're not exactly one, but don't hesitate to keep telling the system or the platform that you're using how they can make that better for you, so that over time it is obviously so it learns by the feedback that you give it, by the answers that you put a thumbs up to versus answers that you put a thumbs down to. And every time you feed it information and you give it feedback, it learns so that it performs better for you next time. So these are great tools to save time and sort of help you get in front of your application so that you can kind of tailor them without losing too much time for different things. What we can, obviously a lot of times we'll end up panicking about the fact that we have to do this so many times, you have to tailor every application. And so this is where we use these tools. So now we're going to talk about creating an ATS optimized CV. We've learned about what the ATS is. We've learned about the tools at our disposal. And now we've also learned that it's really important that every time we submit an application, it is tailored to the job description. So how do we do that? How do we do that quickly, time efficiently? So we're going to start with your CV. Obviously, you all know what a CV is. It's one of the most important documents for your career, and it's going to stay that way sort of throughout your professional journey. It's only when you reach sort of executive or C-suite levels that your CV stops mattering as much, but it is your personal branding tool. It is obviously very important to customize its content, as we spoke about, tailoring it to different things, and obviously make it coherent with your real life experience and competencies. It's a tool that will help you stand out every time you apply to a certain job or an internship, or even if you're going to be applying to a master's program. So let's talk about how to create an ATS optimized CV. Now, one of the best ways to do this is to start with the job description. I always advise that whenever you see a job that you want to apply to, it's really, really important that you save it so that you don't lose it. And you use that job description as a tool to customize and tailor your CV. What the job description does is tells you exactly what the company is looking for. So you need to go into the job description and you need to make a note of the keywords in the job description, such as the skills, the competencies, and the responsibilities that the employer wants for that particular role. And then try and adjust your CV using similar language to show that you meet the different kind of competencies that are listed in the job description. So you can do this by obviously trying to identify the most frequently used words on the company's webpage as well. And you can sort of cross-reference them with the job description. The other thing you need to make sure is that you need to be avoiding grammar mistakes. Now, this is something that seems extremely basic, but it is still one of the biggest problems that we see. A lot of times, students don't take the time to just make sure that their grammar is good on the CV. And this is another place where ChatGPT can come in. If English is not your first language and you're applying in an English-speaking country, or you're applying in any other language that is not your first language, it is very important that there are no grammar mistakes. So the best way to do this is obviously once you've fully wrapped up your CV, it's ready to go, you put it in one of these platforms and you ask it to run a spell check for you. Of course, there will be certain things that you need to keep in mind. For example, things like British spelling and American spelling. So if you are obviously applying in sort of a UK based role or in the UK, then make sure that you're using the UK spelling. If you're applying in the US, then you make sure that you're using the US based spelling. So those are really common things that people sometimes get wrong, and it's really important to keep these in mind. The other thing that is really important is to use recognizable professional roles, highlight obviously your skills and achievements, as well as adding a personal description and bullet points, a format for CVs all throughout. Use an established structure with logical hierarchy of elements. So obviously, if currently you are in sort of university, you're studying, you've not gained that much professional, it's really great to start with your education first. However, I would say as you sort of gain professional experience throughout life, and once you've reached the sort of 5+ years of professional experience, it's a good idea to swap and lead the CV with your professional experience and keep your education second. So at different times of your career, different things matter. So obviously right now we'll be focused more on your education side of things, and you'll be building up the professional experience. Whereas as you've gained a certain number of years of experience, your experience will take precedence. Make sure you use the correct file format. Obviously, times students upload CVs, let's say in a PDF, and it's not it. So just make sure at the end, it will be written at the end of the job description how and what format is accepted. So it's really important that you keep and look at that. So moving on to how to create an ATS optimized CV. So obviously make sure that you're using the ATS readable font. So obviously the most important thing is to just stick to some of the regular fonts. So the top fonts that we generally recommend are these, so the Calibria, Cambria, Garamond, Helvetica, the works. And then obviously that you are using the correct template for different markets. Now, these change from market to market, and it is really, really important that you make sure that everything is in the correct template. So I'm going to give you an example of what we use in the UK in the next slide. So if, thank you, Genesis. If you obviously, this is a little bit hard to read, I understand, so please don't feel free to just zoom in. But generally in the UK, we've got a CV that is quite basic, and it follows a very, very basic format. We start with your name and contact details at the top. We then have something known as the optional summary. I think the summary is a really great way to attract attention to sort of some of the key skills that the employer is looking for. So remember earlier we spoke about a job description. In the job description, let's say it says that you require 5 years of experience and you require an additional language like Spanish in order to be able to apply for the job. What you want to do is, if you fit some of the requirements really, really well, it is important that you make that clear within the first few seconds of anyone seeing your CV. On average, if your CV goes to a human being, they will spend no more than 5 to 7 seconds filtering out and reading your CV. So obviously, in this case, the first impression really matters. And this is where the tool like the summary box comes in. So for example, you can talk about the fact that you have 5 years of experience and that you're bilingual, so you're fluent in English and Spanish. What that will do is instantly show the recruiter who is reviewing the CV that you meet 2 of the requirements. This will make them want to continue reading because it will grab their attention, and it will make sure they will then be mentally making a checklist of what other things you meet in from the job description. So the summary, a really, really great way to highlight something that you completely match with the job description. You can then sort of follow that up with your education. You can talk about sort of your school, and sometimes if it's, let's say, your first or second job or a first or second internship, we really advise you to talk about some core courses that you have done that are relevant to the internship that you're applying for. So for example, I'm not saying list every course that you're doing, but really important is to maybe think about writing relevant program. You're applying for finance or you're applying for banking, you can talk about sort of any of the financial modeling workshops or classes that you've done. You can add them in there. We then obviously move on to the profession section. It's really important to have your dates, the name of the organization, and obviously some bullet points. It's also very advisable to make sure that at least one of your bullet points has an achievement in it if you can. and add numbers to bullet points wherever possible. So an example of this would be, let's say you work at a call center and you take a large volume of calls. So there are two ways of writing that. You can say, I take a large volume of calls on a daily basis, or you can say, I on average solve 150 customer inquiries on a daily basis. What that does is that it's, the word large is very subjective. It may mean 50 to someone, 60 to someone. It doesn't give me an idea of what you mean when you say handled a large volume of calls. But when you say I've handled 150 customer inquiries successfully every single day, it shows to me that you can manage sort of, let's say, an environment which is high pressure. You can deal with stress because you're dealing with so many different calls on a single day. So really good idea. Make sure you're adding bullet points, make sure you're adding some statistics, and wherever you can, add an achievement as your final bullet point for every professional experience. Finally, we'd always say you can talk about your languages. This tends to be, especially if you're based in Europe, it's a really great way to kind of stand out with your application, because not everybody speaks a second or a third language. So if you do that, it's really important to say you put it in the languages section, but you also put it at the top in the summary section. And it's great. You can just say if you're an advanced, beginner, or intermediate for that language. You don't have to put in the levels like A2, C2, B2. And finally, we end with things like extracurriculars. This is a great way to kind of just sort of show what your personality is outside of the work environment, because you'll be working with different people. It helps the recruiters to understand if you'll be a good fit for the team that they're hiring for. So that's the CV. And obviously now it's time to, we've got our CV, we've got our job description, right? And we are now going to use ChatGPT to kind of just say how we can tailor this. So I'm going to take a second here, because I see there are some questions. So I might just answer those. Thanks, Genesis. Right. So is this CV relevant for UK-based roles only, or can I use it other countries too? You can use this as a sort of main template to most countries. I think it's really, really important that you make sure that your market accepts this kind of CV. So the one thing I would say to you is, for example, if you're applying in France, it is something that we do differently from the UK, is that we add a picture or a photo at the right-hand corner of our CV. So again, this goes back to just making sure that you're using the right CV for the right market. In the UK, we leave out personal information like date of birth, a photo, etc. But in France, for example, it is the norm to put your photo on the CV. So just make sure that you're doing that. And obviously differs from industry to industry as well. I would generally very simple, clean template for students, especially for the more traditional industries like finance, banking, consulting, etc. If you're going into marketing or the creative arts or fashion, then you can play around a little bit with sort of the colors and things like that. But always make sure that it is easy to read and that all the relevant information is being highlighted as soon as possible in the CV. So I think I've answered the second question as well. For creative roles such as graphic design and marketing, which is usually more visual and almost serve as part of that could affect whether it passes the ATA screening. So a good way, Nikhil, to kind of tackle that is put a copy of a link to your portfolio on the CV. You can have, obviously, you can make the CV a little bit more sort of appealing, but that doesn't mean that you lose out the content for the ATS. So yes, a CV can be appealing, but it can also have the keywords in it. So this is exactly what we're going to talk about, how to make sure that no matter what kind of CV you have, it has the right keywords so that it's passing the applicant tracking system. Does Easy Apply really work, or is it better for me to go directly to the company's website and apply there instead of using? This is a really good question, and something that I actually is one of my pet peeves. In my opinion, Easy Apply doesn't really well spotted, Paula, and thank you for bringing this up. I personally think it makes it far too easy for people to apply, and so I'm not sure if you've noticed it, but every time you click on Easy Apply, there's almost always more than 150 people who've already applied. And the reason for that is because it's so easy. You have a CV on LinkedIn, you can click apply it, you don't change anything. it's probably the same CV that's been sat there for 3 or 4 months. For some people, they have not even added their latest job or latest education to that CV. So I personally recommend making sure that you are using the easy apply button, because it's easy in the situation. A lot at the end of the job description listing on LinkedIn, you will be able to see the hiring manager's name. So if you've done that and you want to make sure your CV is seen, then I would quickly drop in a message to that hiring manager and say, I'm really interested in this role. I've just applied for it. I'd be really grateful if you can sort of consider my application. The best way, in my opinion, is to make sure that you apply online through the website and then follow that up with a message to the person who is hiring. So either the recruitment manager or the talent acquisition specialist. You need to be doing things to make your application stand out. So if you've taken the sort of initiative to reach out to people to tell them that you've applied and how much you like that role and how much you'd like to contribute to the company and its values, then it will really help you kind of stand out. It also ensures many times that your CV is actually seen, because in a whole host of applications, sometimes your CV is not seen, and unfortunately that is the truth of the matter. So to give you a statistic, in the UK at the moment there are about 142 applications on average for every job, which automatically means that sometimes when you apply to these roles, your CVs are not being seen. So that's that. I will come back to the questions. Guys have got some really great questions. I'm going to leave 15 minutes at the end for questions, but I really wanted to take you through the ChatGPT part. Obviously, some of you might be already familiar with this, but just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as we come to the end of the session. So I will come back to the questions, I promise. We're next sort of moving on to how to make use ChatGPT strategically. So we've spoken about the ATS, we've spoken about your CV, we've spoken about tailoring it, and we've also spoken about the fact that it takes time to tailor it. So how do we make it easier for ourselves? So next thing to do is obviously to use ChatGPT. I've told you about these 3 different tools. So what I would say is just make sure you go and use all 3 of them, see the kind of answers they give you, and see which tool and the responses of which tool resonate with you the most. Just sort of talking about what all things you can do with it. The extent of it is limitless. You can use it to write your cover letters. You can use it to tailor your CVs. You can even use it to sort of update your LinkedIn profile. So what you can do is once your CV is up to scratch, you can put the CV in ChatGPT and you can say put a link to your LinkedIn profile and say, make sure that my LinkedIn profile and my CV are up to date with each other, and it will give you a LinkedIn summary of how you can sort of make sure that both your CV and your LinkedIn profile are in sync. It will take the information from your CV and it will give you things like a LinkedIn headline, a LinkedIn subheadline, so that anyone who's sort of approaching you or seeing your profile on LinkedIn, especially if you're doing things like easy apply, then they have the sort of most information about your education and your experience, as well as your qualifications. So before we move ahead with this, it's really, really important, some sort of things to keep in mind when you use any of these tools. Obviously, confidentiality. I would not recommend putting any sort of sensitive data into these platforms, especially if you're using them for work related to your company. Just make sure that you know and remember that anytime any data that you put into this is automatically also a property of this platform. So it could be ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, etc. If there is any sensitive information, please don't put it in there. Try and redact that information and only put in things that are really important for you to get the response that you want. So for example, if you're updating your CV, I would leave my picture out. If you're applying in a country that requires a picture, I would leave things like my date of birth out, because I don't think that's relevant and you don't want to share this kind of personal information. And obviously make sure that you're not just taking the things that ChatGPT on face value. So a really good approach that I have found to work with ChatGPT, and obviously without losing your personal touch, is to use something that I say as the human followed by AI human approach, which means that you make a draft. So let's say we're talking about a cover letter. You make the first draft of the cover letter based on the information that you found from the job description. You then put that into ChatGPT, along with the job description and ask it to make it either better, make it more tailored. And once you've got that result and you're happy with ChatGPT, you then adapt it one more time to add your personal tone and voice to it so that it doesn't sound robotic. What that does is that it helps you save time, but it also makes you stand out and doesn't make you lose sort of the authenticity of an application. A lot of the times these days, recruiters have said that their CVs and applications that they receive for certain roles, they all read the same. And so they're in a dilemma because they know which candidate is actually a good fit for the job, because everybody's using ChatGPT, everybody's using different, and they're not taking the time to personalize those and make them sound more authentic. So very good idea to follow it with the human AI human approach. You still save time, you still get all the information, but then you make sure that your application is actually standing out. So last few things on this, never leave personal information on ChatGPT when you interact, because obviously that will be part of the platform, especially if you're putting in information for your company and it's sensitive. I would strongly advise against doing that. And also always make sure that you read ChatGPT proposals carefully and with a critical eye. You do know, and you've probably heard, that AI does something we call hallucination, which means that in its need to please and in order to give you an answer, sometimes if it doesn't know the answer, it makes up things. So it's really, really important that you do that. This generally happens more when you run a search on it for something, rather than when you ask it to use the data that you have already given it and then do something like tailor your application, because in that situation you have provided it the context, so it will only stick to what to do and the data that you've given it. If you're asking it to collect data, it is really important that you cross-check it and you cross-verify it. These things are becoming less and happening less frequently as the sort of systems advance and we have new pro versions of these systems. So I would really encourage you, if you don't already have access to a pro version, it's a really good idea to think about maybe investing in one so that you have less of these problems. Just to also let you know, if you are a student, Google is currently offering a 12-month free pro subscription for its Gemini tool, which is exactly the same as ChatGPT. So you'll get advanced version for 12 months. You can go on to any student discount platform. So for example, in the UK, it's called Unidays or Student Beans. You can make an account there with your student email address, and then you'll be able to go to Google Gemini and to get a 12-month free pro subscription. So if you've not already done it, and if you're not already paying for something else, it's a really good idea to go and to hop onto this. Right, now let's go on to this. Keep in mind that AI can never replicate the personal touch that only you can give to your CV, your cover letter, or your LinkedIn profile through your distinct communication style and unique experiences, which is why it's so important to make sure that you are in this process and you are tailoring it after you get the response. AI can only and should only be used as guidance in organizing your responses and emphasizing relevant aspects in your job applications or interviews. And remember, your ability to communicate your motivation and interest is something that will always go beyond the capability of AI. So no matter how good it becomes at understanding the kind of responses that you like, it will always still be not a human being doing that. So just keep that in mind. There's a really interesting article here from The Vault, which talks about pros and cons of using AI in different aspects of life. So I would really recommend that you read that. So we're going to quickly go on to how to use ChatGPT for prompting the AI to give you a tailored session. So make sure that ChatGPT or any other AI tool, they work really by the basis of the prompt that you give the system. So it is really important that your prompt is super accurate and as to the point as possible so that you get better results from these prompts. So you should provide ChatGPT some context by supplying it some resources to review first. So for example, we are talking about CVs. I'd ask you to put your CV, a job position, a job description, etc. And then this information will be used by ChatGPT to formulate a response for you. Tell ChatGPT exactly what you're looking for. This is really, really important. A lot of people think that they know how to use these tools, but they mastered the art of prompting. The prompting is the way you get all the information. Sometimes it is an art on how to craft the right kind of prompt. So I would actually really advise you to spend some time. Once you've mastered and you've got a CV or an application that looks exactly like what you want it to be, I would make sure that you save the prompt. Once you save the prompt, you can create that saved prompt in ChatGPT as a saved prompt, or in Google Gemini as something called the gem. And then you can reuse it every time you want to tailor your application. So it's a great idea to just sit down, take some time, make a good prompt, and then save it so that you can reuse it again. Make sure these prompts are extremely specific, and make sure that this will sort of enable you to get the best responses. Obviously, verify all the responses that you have for accuracy. So if it's a company, make sure that you've gone and checked on the website that what ChatGPT has given you is all correct. Moving on, we're going to now try and use this ChatGPT prompt to sort of muscle CV. So the first thing we're going to do is to ask it to analyze a job description. So I've taken this job from the internet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this job. What I did is that I took this job description and I added it on ChatGPT, and this is the prompt that I used. I said, I am applying for the role of a graduate area shift manager at Amazon in Italy. I've then said to ChatGPT to act as a CV expert and highlight the 3 or 4 most important responsibilities listed in this job description. I then copy pasted the job description. So this prompt will help me analyze the long, detailed sort of job that I've got, and it will synthesize it and highlight the keywords that I should be using in my CV. So this is the job here. Genesis, how do I go to the other screen that I wanted to share? There we go. Thank you. So this is the job here. I'm going to just take you through it if you want to quickly read it. That's what we were using. So it's given us a summary of key responsibilities, which says promote a safety of culture and well-being, analyze and implement corrective actions, support and lead and handle a team. And then it gives you a little bit about a day in the life of. So it will show you what you can expect. It says you work in shifts, and be based one of our operational sites. And it will also talk about some basic qualifications. So this is the job description that I gave ChatGPT. Now I'm going to go back to our slides. Thank you. And now I'm going to show you what ChatGPT came up with. So obviously over here, keep in mind, I said 3 or 4 of the most important responsibilities. So it's not going to give me anything more. If you want more, you need to tell it. Exactly where I was talking about making your prompt super specific. If you said 3 or 4, you will only get 3 or 4. But if you want more, then you need to tell it to do that. So this is ChatGPT's answer. It said to me, in reviewing the job description for the Amazon graduate area and shift manager, the most important responsibilities highlighted include team leadership and people management, safety and well-being oversight, data-driven performance analysis and process improvements, as well as cross-functional collaboration. So not only has it told me the 4 most important things based on what I asked, what it also done is it's told me, because I said that I want to tailor my CV to it, it has told me what of these I should be highlighting on my CV. So over here, it says in the first part what to highlight: experience leading groups, even in university projects or part-time jobs, coaching others, managing conflict or motivation. For the safety and well-being part, it says any role where you implemented safety measures, followed compliance protocols, or encouraged well-being in the workplace. For the data-driven part, it says any experience with data analysis, KPIs, Sigma, or process optimization. And for cross-functional collaboration, it says collaboration across teams, departments, or with external partners. Soft skills like communication and adaptability matter here. So it's even gone one step ahead, and it's told you that something like soft skills, which a lot of time we ignore when we're talking about tailoring our CV, we focus a lot on the technical aspects of the job and not the soft skills that come with it. It's said to you that if you can highlight something about your soft skills, that's really, really great as well. So how do we use this? Now we've got this answer, we pasted the job description, we now want to use it to tailor our CV. So here's how we can use it. What you could do, it's in the previous slide, it told you one of the main sort of highlighted the main things that they're looking for in the job description. The answer says team leadership and team management. So managing large, diverse teams and building a strong team culture. What you can do with your bullet point is wherever you can find that the closest experience it to is, you will say, you may include in your bullet point to show team leadership. You could say something like, manage 3 servers in a restaurant to exceed customer expectations and improve table turnover per night by 25%. Now, this is a really, really great example of what as many of your bullet points should look like when you are writing your CV. It has everything that I spoke about. It is talking about the fact that you've got leadership skills because you managed a team. So instead of just saying you manage a team and you have leadership skills, you are showing the recruiter that you manage 3 servers in a restaurant and you've exceeded customer expectations, which means that you are generally someone who goes above and beyond from what is expected of you. And not only that, you've been able to add an achievement of how your sort of work has directly impacted the business in a positive way. So every night you manage to improve table turnover by 25%. What this means is that every night, as you've got more tables and more people eating, you've managed to increase the revenue of the restaurant. So you have said all of these things, and you have just done it by using one bullet point that ChatGPT has helped you formulate. So this is how you will be doing this. Okay, you will be adding the job description in there. You can continue to keep doing this. So we've obviously just spoken about the 4 main skills. You can then rewrite the prompt and you can say focus on skills as well as highlight the main basic qualifications that are required in order to help me apply for this job. Sometimes they will be minimum basic qualifications, like for example, the speaking a second language or having some technical skills. So for example, Python, SQL, etc. So if you rephrase your prompt that we used before, and instead of just highlighting the 3 to 4 main skills, it also tells you the 3 to 4 main basic requirements, you will be able to then use all to tailor your CV to this job description. Obviously, something here in red, always customize your text. Never try and copy and paste ChatGPT's results directly. So this is something that you can now put into practice. We won't do it now because we are a little bit short on time and I would like to answer some questions. But what you can do is this is another prompt that you can use. So the prompt here is personalize this CV for the position of, you insert the job title, which you will get from the job description, at this company, and then you name the company. Here's the job description. You paste the CV, you paste the job description, and then you say, and here's my CV, and then you paste your CV. And obviously we spoke about make sure that you remove any personal information before submitting this on ChatGPT. Try and now use the results like we did in this slide before, how we sort of made the bullet point. Try and not copy paste exactly. Even if you copy paste it, just make sure then you're adapting it later on. Take the elements that you find particularly relevant for your communication and then include them in the draft CV, right? So what I would recommend once you sort of finish with your day, go onto one of these tools, Google, Copilot, ChatGPT, take a job description, start playing around with it so that when the time comes and you're ready to apply for a job and you want to do it quickly, you have your prompt saved, you have your CV saved so that you can get it tailored really, really quickly. Okay. The last few things that I wanted to take you to, you can also use, we spoke about the summary part at the top of the CV, which again, in my opinion, is a really great way to highlight certain skills. The prompt to use that is you have customized and redesigned your CV. You can enter this prompt, write a summary or a professional objective, my CV. You then paste the CV, which is the version that you're happy with, and then keep it to a maximum of 3 to 4 lines. The other thing you can do is you can copy a bullet point from your CV, like the one that we had before, paste it into ChatGPT and ask it to rewrite this bullet point so that it uses compelling language as well as performance indicators from your CV. So this is a great way to add the achievements as well as sort of some numbers and metrics that we spoke about into your bullet points. Right, so it's almost up. This is our last slide. You can do all of this, of course, to also write your cover letter. It can assist you in drafting a version to address the requirements of a job description. Overall, it can write the whole cover letter for you, and then you can start adapting it and adding your personal touch. And this is the prompt. You can say, write a cover letter and make sure you add metrics with metrics for the following job description. Use my CV for reference and keep it less than 400 words. I don't know if you've been noticing to keep the prompts extremely specific, because this will really help you get better answers. So that's almost it. This is a list of AI tools that you can use. You can take a photo of this. These are all the tools that I recommend. Just go and use them. Some are for writing prompts, some are for making presentations. Some are for preparing for interviews, like Google Interview Warm-Up. So try and use all of these, make them your best friends, and hopefully you'll find that it makes your job application life a little bit easier. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. I'm here now to have a few questions, so happy to kind of answer those for you. Okay, so I'm just going to go here. Is it compulsory that a CV should be presented in just one-page format? That's a really good question. And the answer to that is yes, as far as possible. Generally speaking, we recommend one page. And this is one of the reasons the tool like ChatGPT is really great. Some students struggle with fitting everything into one page. So that's another sort of thing that you can do. You can write a CV and then you can say, rewrite my CV to make sure that it fits in one page. Generally, I don't recommend 2 pages for anyone who has less than 8 to 10 years of experience. And it's because I told you about the fact that recruiters only spend about 5 to 7 seconds per CV, which means that if it's any longer than one page, it's likely the second page will not even. So yes, as far as possible, please keep your CV to one page. Do you think it makes a difference to send the cover letters? I asked that in the last webinar, but I'd like to also see your perspective. I think it depends, Paula, because I think sometimes applicants, so for here in the UK, it is a norm for companies to ask for a cover letter. And I think it differs from company to company. So some companies that want you to apply online directly through their portal, sometimes are not even accepting CVs anymore. They have to manually add the data into their platform so that it stays there. It's time consuming, but what it does is that if you've not been successful the first time around, the second time around, all of that data is saved, so you don't need to re-enter it. So I would also say if you're using a CV, make sure you use it strategically to say things that are not in your CV. Otherwise, what you can do is if you're sending your CV by email, then you can just use the text of the email as a little bit of a cover letter. So I would always say, make sure that you double check what everyone says, about it. So just make sure that the application, if it's asking for a cover letter, I would always advise for you to add one of those. How important is sending portfolios as well while applying for a job? I suppose it depends. So if you're in the creative industries, you're applying for things like marketing or fashion or luxury or sort of blog writing, portfolios tend to be extreme because you want people to be able to see the work that you've already done. In a more traditional industry, it's not that important. However, if you think it's going to add value to your application, then you should add it. You should do whatever helps you stand out and whatever helps you add value to your application. So if you've got a website where you've been, let's say, blogging about something and it's not directly relevant to the job that you're applying for, I'd still recommend having a link to it in your summary section or your extracurricular section of the CV, or you can add it into something like the cover letter that we just spoke about. I was applying using this strategy, but I never got a positive response. I don't know why it gets rejected. I am experiences, have skills and certifications also. Yes, I understand it is possible, but I think it's really the one thing that I would say here is just make sure that you're really tailoring the applications, because we get this question from students a lot that they've been applying, they use chat. I think one of the things I could think of why it's not working is that either the application has not been tailored properly, or the application from ChatGPT has been copy pasted directly, which means you've not sort of taken the human part of the application. So really make sure that although you're doing all of these things, you still manage to add your personal authentic touch to the application. Okay. Is it better to include or remove the graduation date for my undergraduate or postgraduate education? I think it's a really good idea to include the date, and actually I would include it in the summary. So I would say you don't have to really put the date, but I would say you say when you're available from. A lot of times, for example, if a role starts immediately or a role starts at a certain time, the person looking at the CV needs to know if you're going to be available or not, because if you're not available and the times don't match, they're not going to bother seeing your CV. So put it in the summary section where you're talking about your things, and you can say available to start from XYZ date. So I would definitely add it there. Is it a good idea to leave a link to LinkedIn? I have seen many do this. I don't have much work experience, so it is a bit hard for me to get jobs. Yes, I do think it is a good idea to have a link to your LinkedIn profile on your CV. However, it should be in tandem with your CV. So if your LinkedIn profile is not currently complete and it's not up to scratch, I would leave it out for the time being. But I would say to you that you should take some time to invest it, because a lot of recruiters, when they get a CV, sometimes they will go on LinkedIn just to see your profile, to see what else you've got, say any other qualifications, especially if they like your application, they will be looking for more reasons to like your application on LinkedIn. So really, really important that it's currently up to date. How many percent of requirements does the ATS accept matching applications? If I only meet 70% of the requirements, will the ATS still accept me? That's a really good question. And then here I would say it depends on what the company has added into the ATS system. So I would say, as a general rule of thumb, if you meet more than 70% or at least 70% of the requirements, you should consider applying. No one is 100% fit for any job, but above 70% gives you a really good chance of being accepted. Sometimes for some very technical roles, they require you to have technical skills like, Python, SQL, Bloomberg, etc. In those cases, they may make it that at least, in those cases, they may make it that at least 80 to 90% of your CV should match the requirements. But for most roles, my general rule of thumb is if you meet 70% of the criteria, you should definitely apply. How to connect with HRs and recruiters on LinkedIn, even if they are connected to LinkedIn, either most of them don't reply or reply very late. Yes, that's a very good question, and it's a very valid point. We have this a lot of the times from students. 1 minute left, so I think this will be the last question that I can answer. But yes, you're very right. Sometimes recruiters don't reply. So I would say don't take it personally, but also don't hesitate to follow up. A lot of the times people will send the one message, but they won't follow up. A lot of the times they will not write a personalized message. So a really good way to write a personalized message is to follow this person. Let's say it's an HR person. Look at some of their posts, look at some of the things that they've posted. If they talk about things generally, if they talk about recruitment, if they talk about using AI in recruitment, etc., then use them that you find to formulate a message that is more personal and say, hi, so-and-so, I recently saw an article that you spoke about, that you wrote about AI tools in recruitment. I thought this was extremely beneficial, so I shared it with the rest of my team, and everybody has found it really, really useful. So this is how you'd start a conversation. You'd make it about them. A lot of the times when students reach out to somebody, they focus about themselves. this is not a great way to start a networking relationship, because when you ask someone for something and you don't know them, chances are they're not going to give it to you. So your first contact with a recruiter or someone you're trying to build a network with should be you reaching out to them, saying how much you appreciate something that they've shared or something that they've done. And then you should use the opportunity to say, I'm really interested in this subject. Would you like to have a coffee chat with me? Or would you be open to having a conversation about something? So try and make every message a person that you are actually reaching out to, at least in the beginning. So don't go there and say, I've applied for this job, can you look at my CV? Chances are they are getting multiple such messages every single day, so they won't. Okay, so that's that. And that's all.
Wow, that was great. Thanks for all that information, Rohan. I hope all of you, it sounds like you had great questions to ask Rohan, and excellent insight in utilizing AI in a smart way to stand out and be successful in your job applications. So thank you, Rohan. That was amazing.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Great. And thank you all to all of you for joining us today. I definitely have no doubt that you've picked up some practical tips and feel a bit more confident about using AI to enhance your CV going forward. And as I mentioned, thanks, Rohan, for sharing your expertise. It's always a pleasure to have you joining us and your contributions for the Global Fair and this first day, which is especially focused on career development. To wrap up, don't forget at 3 o'clock, we'll continue with our next session, and it is focused on careers and life design, hosted by Matthias, a hired career professional. So we hope to see you there. Enjoy the rest of your day, whatever part of your day it is, and thanks for joining in.